Okay, we're on the record, case number 12 CF 1083A, State versus George Zimmerman. Are you still working on the evidence locker?
Your Honor, as to the first two witnesses, I don't think we need to show any exhibits, so I think we could proceed and then maybe take a break. But
okay, is that too distracting for you, or do you think that we can have them? You can keep trying to get it opened if you can. All right, is there anything else that we need to take up this morning before we begin with the next witness?
You want to make sure that you got the notes that I have given this morning to the deputy about scheduling?
No.
This is that we'll have a full day of trial today,
okay.
And we have depositions being taken care of over the weekend.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for working that out.
And I guess that means that we're not working tomorrow morning because we have depots scheduled.
Yes, you are right in that assumption.
Just have a couple of items. We do intend to call the medical examiner today,
Mm-hmm.
and the parties have reached a stipulation regarding the identity of the victim that we would ask the court to read
Yes.
at that time, so I'll present that to the clerk. I don't know if the court wants to question the defendant about who signed that document.
Okay, well, let me go ahead and look at it first. Okay, and Mr. Zimmerman, if you'll stand up for just one moment, sir. I've been handed a stipulation that appears to be signed by the state, your attorneys, and yourself, and it's a stipulation that the body examined on February 27th, 2012 by Dr. Shipping Bayo, bearing the medical examiner's case number is that of Trayvon Benjamin Martin. Do you agree with this stipulation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and is
Yes,
that
Your
your
Honor.
signature that appears on it?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you very much.
Your Honor, also on Monday, I filed a motion in limine regarding an expert witness of the defense. We don't need to hear that now, but I just wanted an opportunity to furnish the case law to the court that's cited in the motion in the event the court hasn't had an opportunity to review those.
Thank you.
Judge, finally from the state, we're asking the court to take judicial notice of weather conditions from the evening of February 26, 2012, and there's a report attached to the request from Weather Underground. It documents things like wind direction, wind speed, rainfall amounts, barometric pressure, things of that sort. We're asking the court to take judicial notice of that and enter that then later as the next numbered exhibit.
We would object to that.
Okay, we'll take this up then later. I'll hear your objections then.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Was there anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, the jury ready? Let's begin. Please be seated. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. I hope you had a nice 4th of July. While you're getting settled in, I'm going to ask my questions. If your answer is yes to any of my questions, please raise your hand. During the recess, did any of you have any discussions amongst yourselves or with anybody else about the case? No hands are being raised. Did any of you read or listen to any radio, television, or newspaper reports about the case? No hands are being raised. Did any of you use any type of an electronic device to get on the internet to do independent research about the case, people, places, things, or terminology? No hands are being raised. And finally, did any of you read or create any emails, text messages, Twitters, tweets, blogs, or social networking pages about the case? Okay, thank you very much. The state may call your next witness.
State, we call Sabrina Fulton.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Judge, can we approach the bench?
Yes, you may. You may proceed.
Ma'am, could you state your name for the record, please?
Sabrina Fulton.
And could you spell your first name and last name?
My first name is Sybrina. The last name is Fulton, Fulton.
Are you married, ma'am?
I'm divorced.
And do you have any children?
Yes, I do.
And can you tell us who they are and their names?
My youngest son is Trayvon Benjamin Martin. He's in heaven. And my oldest son is Javaris Lamar Fulton.
Okay. Do you live in Miami, ma'am?
Yes, I do.
And have you lived in Miami your entire life?
Yes, I have.
And who do you live in Miami with?
My son Javaris Fulton and my brother Ronald Fulton.
Okay. Was Trayvon Benjamin Martin your son?
Yes, he was.
And was his date of birth February the 5th of 1995?
Yes, it is.
Are you working at this time, ma'am?
I am employed. I'm on leave right now.
Okay. Where are you currently employed, or who are you currently employed with where you're on leave?
I actually work for Miami-Dade County Public Housing and Community Development.
Okay. How long have you been working there, ma'am?
I've been with the county for 24 years. I've been with the housing agency for about 10 years.
And prior to going to the housing agency, what did you do?
I did code enforcement for 11 years.
And can you briefly tell us about your education background, ma'am?
I have a bachelor's degree with a minor in communications from Grambling State University. Was half of my courses, and I graduated from Florida Memorial University in Miami.
What was your major? I'm sorry.
My major was English with a minor in communications.
Okay. Was Trayvon Martin right or left-handed?
Trayvon was right-handed.
Trayvon Martin had 2 tattoos on his bodies. Do you know where they were on his body?
He had praying hands on his right upper shoulder with his grandmother's and great-grandmother's name. That's the first tattoo. They were praying hands, and they had pearls going through them.
Okay. And do you know where the other tattoo was?
The other tattoo was on his left wrist. He had my name there.
Okay. Prior to your son's death, had you heard him crying or yelling prior to his death? Had you ever heard him while he was growing up and while you were raising him? Had you ever heard him crying or yelling?
Yes.
Okay. I want to play a recording for you, ma'am.
911, do you need police, fire, medical?
Maybe both. I'm not sure. There's just someone screaming outside.
Okay, what's the address that they're near?
1211 Twin Trees Lane.
Twin Trees Lane? Is this in the Twin Lake Town Homes in Sanford?
Yes.
Okay, and is it a male or female?
It sounds like a male.
And you don't know why?
I don't know why. I think they're yelling help, but I don't know. Just send someone quick, please.
Okay. Does he look hurt to you?
I can't see him. I don't want to go out there. I don't know what's going on. So they're sending him.
So you think he's yelling help?
Yes.
All right, what is your phone number?
There's gunshots.
You just heard gunshots?
Yes.
Ma'am, that screaming or yelling, do you recognize that?
Yes.
And who do you recognize that to be, ma'am?
Trayvon Benjamin Martin.
Your Honor, subject to the issue we discussed, she's going to be recalled. I have no further questions at this time.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to hold off on your cross until we finish the direct?
I can talk to her now, and then if there's need afterwards, I'll continue that.
Okay, then you may do so.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Firstly, truly apologize for your loss.
Objection, improper, no, not a question.
Okay,
Oh, I'm
you need to
sorry.
make a question.
Excuse me?
You need to ask a question.
Will you tell us the first time that you listened to that tape, when you listened to it? Where were you?
I was here in Sanford. I believe it was the mayor's office.
And that was pursuant to a request made by your lawyers to have that tape released, correct?
That's correct.
And my understanding is that that happened actually in the mayor's office, correct?
Yes.
And there were no law enforcement officers present?
They were there, but they wasn't actually in the room.
They were actually not allowed in the room, correct?
I don't know about that.
Were you present there when Chief Lee was talking to the mayor and to City Manager Bonaparte about the concern with having the tape released?
Objection is to hearsay.
I asked whether or not she was there.
Your objection?
Question.
My objection is to hearsay what somebody else said in her presence.
It will be sustained as to hearsay. Rephrase your question.
Were you there during the time that Chief of Police Lee, was having a conversation with the mayor and City Manager Bonaparte?
No.
When the tape was played for you, who played it for you?
I'm not absolutely sure. I'm just trying to remember back. I think it was the mayor.
It was not any law enforcement officer, correct?
It was not.
And who was in the room when that tape was played?
Trayvon's dad, Tracy Martin, Javaris Fulton, Stephanie Sands, Darian Sands, Benjamin Crump, Attorney Natalie Jackson, I believe Mayor Triplett was there, and that there may have been one other person, not absolutely sure, but I think Bonaparte was there.
When you say Bonaparte, that's Sanford City Manager Bonaparte?
Yes.
Was the tape, the first time that you heard that tape, was it played at one time for everybody who was in the room?
Yes.
Did any one of those witnesses listen to the tape individually? Or was it all at one time?
I don't know if they listened individually, but that was my first time hearing it.
Well, had anybody indicated to you in that group that they had listened to the tape before?
No.
Did Tracy Martin tell you he listened to the tape before?
No.
Had you had any conversations with him about listening to the tape before that event?
No.
Imagine that it was probably one of the worst things that you went through to listen to that tape, correct?
Absolutely.
And that if it was your son, in fact, screaming, as you testified, that would suggest that it was Mr. Zimmerman's fault that led to his death, correct?
Correct.
And if it was not your son screaming, if it was, in fact, George Zimmerman, then you would have to accept the probability that it was Trayvon Martin who caused his own death, correct?
I don't understand your question.
Okay. If you were to listen to that tape and not hear your son's voice, that would mean that it would have been George Zimmerman's voice, correct?
And not hear my son screaming?
Correct.
Is that what you're asking?
Yes, ma'am.
I heard my son screaming.
I understand. The alternative, the only alternative, would you agree, would be that if it was not your son screaming, that it would be George Zimmerman, correct?
Objection is to speculation.
Sustained.
You certainly had to hope that that was your son screaming even before you heard it, correct?
I didn't hope for anything. I just simply listened to the tape.
Mm-hmm. And in your mind, as his mother, there was no doubt whatsoever that it was him screaming, correct?
Absolutely.
Did you have any thought in mind how you would react if you believed or didn't hear your son's voice?
I really didn't know what the tape was all about.
And everybody else in the room, when they listened to the tape, who was the first one to react?
I was.
And everybody else then reacted similarly to you, correct?
Well, they also heard the tape themselves.
Correct. And every one of them then told you that they agree with your opinion that it was Trayvon Martin's voice, correct?
They didn't tell me anything.
When you mentioned a moment ago that you didn't know what, nobody spoke to you to tell you that you would soon be listening to screams from the event that led to your son's death?
No.
Mayor Triplett never said anything like that to you?
No.
Nor did any of your other family members?
They hadn't heard the tape at that time.
But the question is whether or not anyone told you to prepare yourself for the event, for the trauma of having to listen to somebody scream moments before your son was shot.
No.
Nobody mentioned that to you?
No.
Tracy Martin never told you about that?
No.
And you just need to listen to it one time, correct?
That's it.
One moment, Charlie.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ron. For now, obviously, based upon potential recall.
Yes. Any redirect?
You were asked about hope. Did you hope your son wouldn't be dead, Trayvon Martin? You were asked by defense counsel about hope, didn't you? Are you still hoping that he would still be alive?
I hope he was still alive.
And I don't know how else to ask this, but I'm going to ask it. Did you enjoy listening to that recording?
Absolutely not.
Thank you. That's another question.
Okay, Ms. Fulton? Yes.
It caused another issue is, ma'am, and the risk of another objection, I don't mean to put you through this any more necessary than we need to, but you certainly would hope that your son Trayvon Martin did nothing that could have led to his own death, correct?
What was your question again?
You certainly hope, as a mom, you certainly hope that your son Trayvon Martin would not have done anything that would have led to his own death, correct?
What I hope for is that this wouldn't have never happened and he would still be here.
Absolutely.
That's my hope.
Absolutely. And now dealing with the reality that he's no longer here, it is certainly your hope as a mom, hold out hope as long as you can, that Trayvon Martin was in no way responsible for his own death, correct?
I don't believe he was.
I know. And that's the hope that you continue, correct?
I don't understand what you're trying to ask me.
And again, I don't mean to put you through more than we need to know the question, Sean.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Fulton, you may step down. You're subject to being recalled. Just so we know, we're having an issue with the evidence locker door, and as soon as that gets resolved, you'll be more than likely recalled. Okay, thank you. State, want to call your next witness, please?
Ms. Fulton, please.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir. If you'd please tell the members of the jury your name.
Javaris Fulton,
Mr. Fulton, how old are you?
22,
In what city do you currently live?
Miami,
Can I ask you to scoot up just a little bit so we can get you into that microphone? How long have you lived in the Miami area?
all my life.
Are you in school?
Yes,
Where is it that you attend school?
Florida International University,
And what year will you be at FIU this coming fall?
this will be my senior year.
Do you have a major?
Yes,
And what is that?
information technology.
And are you a full-time student?
Yes,
Are you related to Trayvon Martin?
yes,
How so?
that's my brother.
And are you older or younger than Trayvon Martin?
Older,
How much older?
about 4.5 years.
What is your mother's name?
Sabrina Fulton,
And what is your, are you related to Tracy Martin?
yes,
How are you related to Tracy Martin?
that's my dad.
Is he your biological father?
No,
Why do you call him your dad?
well, he's the only dad I know. I grew up with him,
Did you and Trayvon Martin grow up together?
yes.
And how would you describe your relationship with Trayvon Martin growing up? Were y'all close or what?
Yes, we were very close.
Despite the 4 years age difference, did the two of you, you and Trayvon Martin, do things together when you were growing up?
Yes,
Let me turn your attention to the month of February 2012. Were you and Trayvon Martin living together at that time?
yes.
And who did you live with?
My mom, Sabrina Fulton, my brother, and my uncle.
Let me turn your attention to Sunday, February 26th. Were you aware that Trayvon Martin was with his father, Tracy Martin, in Sanford, Florida that day?
Yes.
Did you go to Sanford that weekend?
No.
At some point, were you notified that Trayvon had been killed in Sanford?
Yes.
And when were you told?
Monday.
And who told you?
My mother.
Since your brother's death, have you had an opportunity to hear a tape that contains screaming and a gunshot?
Yes.
Can you estimate for the members of the jury approximately how many times you've heard that tape?
Anywhere between 10 to 15 times.
And how have you heard it? Have you heard it on a computer, on TV, on the internet, or what?
I've heard it from a computer and from TV.
And do you recognize any voices on that tape?
Yes.
Whose voice do you recognize?
My brother.
Trayvon's?
Yes.
What parts of the recording do you recognize as your brother's voice?
The yelling and the screaming.
Had you ever heard Trayvon Martin yell or scream as the two of you were growing up?
I've heard him yell, but not like that, but yes.
You know, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Cross.
Yes, how are you? Morning, sir.
Good morning.
You actually were not as certain that it was your brother's voice when you first heard it, though, correct?
Correct.
Matter of fact, you had talked to a reporter about whose voice it may have been, correct?
Yes.
And you told that reporter, Gio Benitez, on March 31st of 2012, that you weren't sure, correct?
Yes.
You said that, honestly, really haven't listened to it. I've heard it. I would think it was my brother, but I'm not completely positive. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
You'll have to answer out now.
Yes.
So, having listened to the tape, the first time you listened to it was in the mayor's office in Sanford, correct?
Yes.
And your mom was there, correct?
Yes.
And other family members, and at least 2 attorneys, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And during that time, you listened to it along with everybody else, correct?
Yes.
And from having listened to it, it was your thought that it might be Trayvon, correct?
When we heard it in the mayor's office, how do I explain it? I guess I didn't want to believe that it was him. So that's why during that interview, I said I wasn't sure. I guess it was, listening to it was clouded by shock and denial and sadness. I didn't really want to believe that it was him.
Sure. But you recall the date or thereabouts when you listened to that? Middle of March 16th of 2012, would that be about right?
I don't remember.
Let me ask it this way. It was a full 2 weeks before you had your sit-down interview with the reporter, Benitez, wasn't it?
I'm not sure.
Okay. If I were to, I mentioned a moment ago that the interview was on CBS Miami Channel 4 on March 31st. Have any reason to contest that?
No, I'm not sure of the dates.
Okay. And I mentioned also that the tape, and we'll find this out from other witnesses, that the tape was played for the family on March 16th or thereabouts. So would you have any reason to contest that?
No.
So if that was about 2 weeks, did you listen to the tape in between?
Probably not.
In the 2 weeks?
Guessing no.
I'm sorry?
I'm guessing no.
Well, the reporter actually played the tape, didn't he? When you were there?
I'm not sure. Actually, could you... I'm not sure of the time you're talking about anymore.
Okay. Let me ask it this way then. Do you recall sitting down with Gio Benitez, a reporter for CBS Miami Channel 4, and talking to him about who you thought may or may not have been on the tape?
Yes.
Do you remember that event?
I remember.
I'm sorry?
Yes, I remember.
And that was the event I talked about earlier, where your first answer to him, his question was, who did you hear crying for help? Remember that question? No?
I don't remember the question.
Okay. Then what I'd like to do, with the court's indulgence, is to play that recording for you and ask if you remember the call at that point, or the TV program at that point.
Judge, I object to that as being improper impeachment.
You would need to do that first outside the presence of the jury for
I
that
understand.
purpose. So ladies and gentlemen, if you'll please put your notepads face down, follow Deputy Jarvis back into the jury room. Please be seated.
And just so we are clear, I know that you have previously suggested that it needs to be played outside the jury. I think that he has now denied the question and answer, and I think it's proper impeachment to play his own words for
I
the
think
jury.
he said he wasn't sure, and if the rules of impeachment require that you show the witness the statement or let them listen to the statement, and that's done to themselves, and since it's going to be played in open court, the jury needed to be removed. So you can play it for him, and we go from there.
Yes, Your Honor.
And Judge, just for the record, I believe the witness's answer was that he told the reporter that he wasn't positive it was his brother's voice. So I think this is not going to be proper impeachment because I think it's consistent with what he said in court.
Let him listen to it.
Obviously, you heard those calls.
It has video. I don't know that it's necessary for the witness to see the video, so rather than go through warming up the
Just go ahead and
projector.
play it, yeah.
Obviously, you heard those calls, and I know that you mentioned the cries for help. When you heard those calls and those cries for help, who did you hear crying for help?
I'm not sure. Honestly, I don't really haven't even listened to them that good. So, like, I've heard it, but my brother, but I'm not completely positive. Okay.
For these purposes, does that assist you in remembering the conversation you had with Gio Benitez?
Yes.
That was, of course, your voice, correct?
Yes.
And you did say to him the words, "I'm not sure."
Yes.
So at that, I think that is for the purpose of impeachment, but I am going to renew my request that based upon his equivocation concerning his answers to Mr.
Well, I need to hear his answer to the original question because the state is saying that he answered similarly. So if the court reporter could take a moment to read it back.
And as she's doing that, I think when I said to him his words, he said yes, but then when I asked him again later, so I think the later question is the more relevant one, he said, "I really don't remember." And it was for that reason that I broke and wanted to remind him. So yes, the first question he did, but then he equivocated towards the end of his testimony.
Judge, I think his answer, if I don't know, was, do you remember the reporter asking you the question, that particular question? But he did not equivocate about what his answer was. He said his answer was he wasn't sure at the time, which is what he said here today.
Thank you. If y'all will just not say anything so the court reporter can look back.
One second, Sheriff. What question you're referring to? I'll just read this question. Good morning, sir.
Not to interrupt you, I think it was literally that question. It was the first question I asked.
Okay. Answer question. You actually were not as certain that it was your brother's voice when you first heard it, though. Correct? Answer, correct. Question. As a matter of fact, you had talked to a reporter about whose voice it may have been. Correct? Answer, yes. Want me to keep going?
Yes, I want,
Question. And you told that reporter, Gio Benitez, on March 3rd, 2012, that you weren't sure. Correct? Answer, yes. Question. You said that honestly, well, you haven't listened to it. I've heard it. I would think it was my brother, but I'm not completely positive. Correct? Answer, uh-huh. Question. You have to answer out loud. Answer, yes.
this would be impeachment of a collateral matter as to whether or not the question was asked, but his answer is the same.
I would ask that the court reporter, my concern was that he equivocated when I asked him just at the end of the examination before he took a break. So maybe if we can have the last 3 or 4 questions, just
Okay.
so it's in context.
I'm not so quite sure what question, well, I'll just read this. Okay, let me ask it this way. When do you recall sitting down with Giovanni Benitez, a reporter for CBS Miami Channel 4, and talking to him about who you thought may or may not have been on the tape? Answer, yes. Question, do you remember that event? Answer, I remember it. Question, I'm sorry? Answer, yes, I remember it. Question, that was the event I talked about earlier where your first answer to him, his question was, who did you hear crying for help? Do you remember that question? Answer, I don't remember the question. And then you wanted to play the tape.
So whether he remembered the question is a collateral matter, his answer was the same, that he told the reporter that he wasn't sure, whatever words were used. So that's not necessarily, that's not impeachment, it's a collateral matter of what the reporter may have asked. His answer did not differ.
And I would renew my request that it be played in front of the jury for a couple of reasons. One, his equivocation just now, and 2, that the best evidence actually is his own words that he spoke to the reporter. It shows his inflection, it shows his hesitation, and rather than having just the colloquy between...
What is the purpose? Is it for impeachment? Because the court's finding it's not impeachment. Is there another legal basis for playing that recording?
It's the best evidence of the event that happened back then, Your Honor, and even if he testified to it now, he's testifying, quite honestly, in a very different attitude and inquiry than it showed.
That's not a legal basis.
I understand the court's concern.
Okay, so for impeachment purposes, no, it may not be played because his answer is the same today as it was then, so that's not impeachment. His not remembering the reporter's question is a collateral matter because it's not the question that matters, it's the answer that's given. So your request is, the objection is sustained.
For record purposes, I would like to have this clip, which we just played to him, marked as an exhibit.
Of course, it would come in as, is it double J? Double J. Not come in, but it'll be marked as double J. Okay, I hear the locksmiths are here and the jury's already out, so let's take a brief recess. Go back to where you were, but you cannot discuss your testimony with anybody, okay? All right. Court will be in recess until further notice. Have Mr. Fulton come back onto the stand. Grace, did you take that? We are.
Jury present, Your Honor.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the extended break, but we were having some technical difficulties in the courtroom that have now been resolved. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Okay, good morning, sir. When we took a break, I was asking you your memory of the question that Mr. Benitez asked you, and I think what you said was you didn't remember the question specifically. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. But leading up to that, we had talked about the fact that you had listened to the tape in the mayor's office in Sanford sometime a couple of weeks before. Do you agree?
Yes.
And that was with all the other family members?
Yes.
And the civil attorneys representing the family, Ben Crump and Natalie Jackson, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You actually listened to it more than once that day. You listened to it at least twice, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And it was even played for other family members more often than twice, right?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay. You don't recall whether or not you had listened to it between the first two times you heard it in the mayor's office and your conversation with Mr. Benitez?
I don't remember, yeah. I don't remember.
It was, of course, available to you, correct?
What do you mean by available?
Well, at that point, the city of Sanford made the decision to release the calls to the general public, right?
I don't remember, but I never had the tapes myself.
Okay. Did there ever come a time in between the first two times that you heard it and your conversation with Mr. Benitez that you wanted to listen to it again but couldn't?
Say it again.
Okay. In the 2-week period between the first two times you listened to it and the time you talked to Mr. Benitez about that, during that period of time, did you ever ask someone to listen to it again and be denied?
No.
So in your mind, listening to it the first two times was what you needed to hear, correct?
Not what I needed, but I didn't want to listen to them again.
Okay. And yet, your answers earlier remain the same, of course. You said what you said to Mr. Benitez about not being sure who it was on the tape, correct?
Yes.
And though you said a moment ago that you didn't want to listen to it more, you actually have listened to it many more times since, haven't you?
Yes.
Okay. Was there a reason why in between the first 2 weeks you didn't want to listen to it, but were okay with listening to it 10 or 15 times afterwards?
Yeah, it's emotional. I didn't want to listen to them again.
But you have listened to it at least 10 times since, correct?
Yeah, well, no, in total 10 times. Okay. So if that was 2, maybe 8 separate occasions.
And you said a moment ago that you lived in the house with Sabrina Fulton and Trayvon Martin, correct?
Yes.
Tracy was not living there at that point, though, correct?
No.
So when you say that you consider Tracy Martin to be your dad, he actually left the home a long, long time ago, correct?
Yes.
How old were you when he actually left the home?
I'm guessing 9 or 10.
And that would have put Trayvon at approximately what age, Trayvon Martin?
If I was 9, he might have been 5.
You, the two of you didn't really hang out together, did you? You and Trayvon Martin?
Yes, but I mean, it depends what you're talking about.
Okay. You didn't have the same friends, correct?
No.
So that if you were to go out somewhere, you might go out and do something with your set of friends, and he would go out and do something with his set of friends.
Correct.
Certainly as brothers, I think you said you would do things together, whatever that might be, correct? But you didn't run in the same circles, did you?
No.
You didn't interact with him on Facebook?
Not really, no.
Nor on Twitter?
No.
But you did interact, of course, with your other friends and on those social media sites, correct?
Occasionally, yes.
I'm going to have a moment, you all right? And when Tracy Martin left the home, he actually got remarried, didn't he?
Yes, some years later, yes.
And was Trayvon Martin then spending a lot of time? The new wife was Alicia, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you spend a lot of time with your dad over at that house?
Yes.
Okay. And did Trayvon Martin as well spend a lot of time over at that house?
Yes.
He was more living there a lot of the time in the last few years, wasn't he?
Not really.
What do you mean by that?
He, well, how it went, let me see, I guess growing up, we usually spent the weekends over there, or whenever we wanted, I guess, we could go over. And towards the end, I don't know, it was about the same.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Thank you. Mr. Fulton, you were asked about listening to that 911 call with your brother's screams on it for the first time at the mayor's office. Was that emotionally difficult for you to hear?
Yes.
Were you still sort of in denial about your brother's death at that point?
Yes.
And then you don't recall listening to that tape again between the time you heard it at the mayor's office and the interview that you were asked about. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
All right. But you did tell the interviewer that you would like to think it's your brother's voice, but you weren't completely positive. Is that what you told him?
Yes.
And then,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
And then since that time of the interview, you had an opportunity, you said 8, possibly more times to listen to it?
Yes.
Do you now believe it's Trayvon Martin's voice yelling for help on the tape?
Yes.
You were asked about growing up. How old were you approximately when your mother, Sabrina Fulton, and Tracy Martin divorced?
About 9.
And as I understood what you said, after that point, you primarily lived with your mother, but you would visit Tracy Martin on the weekends?
Yes.
And any other time you wanted to?
Yes.
And would Trayvon go with you to Tracy Martin's house to visit?
Yes.
You now go to FIU, correct?
Yes.
Where did you go before that? Did you go to a different college?
Yes, I went to FAMU.
And where was that located?
Tallahassee.
All right. When you were at FAMU in Tallahassee, would you come home and stay with your mother and Trayvon Martin?
Yes.
Were there occasions that Trayvon Martin, your brother, went to visit you in Tallahassee when you were in school there?
Yes.
Okay, but back in, I guess, the fall of 11 and the first months of 2012, you were actually at FIU back in Miami.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. May Mr. Fulton be excused?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much, sir. You may be excused. State, please call your next witness.
State would recall Sabrina Fulton.
Your Honor, you approach this briefly on
Yes, and Ms. Fulton, you're still under oath, so we don't need to swear you in again. Please approach. I apologize, but we need maybe 5 minutes. So if you'll please put your notepads face down and follow Deputy Jarvis back into the jury lounge. Please be seated. Yes, you may.
I think a couple of things that you were going to address. I think can we approach that door? Sure.
Please be seated. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You may proceed. Yes, you may.
Ms. Fulton, I'm going to show you part of State's Exhibit 149, and do you recognize this button here?
Yes.
And is this a button that your son always wore, Mr. Trayvon Martin always wore?
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any cross?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. May Ms. Fulton be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am. Call your next witness, please.
Today we call Dr. Bao.